So moving on to the next matchup here, the never open weight title match. The Dragon Shingo Takagi defeats the Madman Gabe Kidd in 21 minutes and 23 seconds. Man, what a banger this was.
Yeah, this match was awesome, and I thought it was a lot better than the first match that they had with one another during the New Japan Cup. But to me, Jeremy, I felt like this match was like a test for Gabe Kidd in a certain sense. Like Gabe is undoubtedly an incredible wrestler. We've known this for a while. We've seen him, have very strong singles matches, but time and time again, I've always felt like his singles matches have been plagued by, for lack of a better terms, like a smoke and mirror type of thing where either there's heavy outside brawling or in his earlier days, there was a lot of shoot style work taking place. And I've never really, not that I doubted his ability, but I can't actually recall too many times where Gabe Kidd has gone out there and wrestled what I would call a house style match. And this was clearly formulaic to what a classic never style match was. Even recently when he wrestled Hikuleo, or not Hikuleo, Aaron Hanare. That was an incredible match, but it was something that was like much more akin to like what you'd see in like a big Japan style match where, the big heavy headbutts and everything like that. But I've never seen him have something where I'm like, this reminds me of the main event style of New Japan. And this was the first time he went out there and like he showed on that level that he can do that. And then and for most of the match, I was like, okay, this is like the test to show that he can go on this level and do this and follow this pattern, follow this formula. But I didn't think that they were going to go beyond the formula. And then down the stretch, all of a sudden, like when they got into the lariat sequence where they were holding each other's wrists and the wrist control and everything, I was like, okay, they're going a little bit above and beyond, and they're really showcasing that, like, because we already know Shingo can do this, but they were showcasing that Gabe Kidd is capable of doing a 20-minute house style main event style New Japan match, and he did.
Yeah, he killed it. And even from the entrance, he had the Dr. Death, Steve Williams inspired ring robe, had the Madman logo on the back of it, new gear, had a fresh cut. I'm like, oh, this man's winning the belt. This man, new gear, new, fresh cut. I'm like, this man's ready to go. But yeah, they killed it. Big, strong strikes and chops, and it was loud, and it definitely felt a big, match atmosphere, and they really brought the crowd in. And the crowd was fine for the whole night, and crowd was kind of normal for the beginning of this match, but as the match got on, they pulled the crowd in deeper and deeper, and they were getting some really big loud reactions towards the end of the match, towards the near falls, that closing sequence. So many good stuff there, and Gabe was biting Shingo's forehead, and that Shingo was fighting back with biting, and you had the big superplex off the top there. Shingo with a great near fall with the Made in Japan. Again, big, trading strikes. Gabe Kidd had a big slap to the face of Shingo at around 18 minutes, followed by a pile driver, and then towards the 20-minute call, Shingo hit a sliding lariat, and Gabe Kidd pops up, and he's that big pumping bomber that turned Gabe Kidd inside out, and hits the Takagi style pile driver for a near fall, which was a great near fall there, and then eventually pulled him up at the last of the dragon. But man, yeah, this is incredible.
Yeah, that Takagi pile driver was pretty sick. I loved, there was an early Gabe Kidd did a snap brainbuster that was really, really sick. And some of the story elements were really cool. Like Gabe Kidd was distracted throughout the match. I think who was on commentary? Was it Despy?
No, Cobb. Well, yeah, Despy was on the Japanese call, but Cobb was on English.
Yeah, he was having heat with Despy on the call, and kind of getting distracted there. And that was one of the story points that they were bringing up, how like Gabe's his attention is spread thin because he's got, Eddie Kingston in the States, and then he's focusing on Shingo, but he's trying to have matches with like guys like Ishii and have a fucking death match with Despy. So it's like he's kind of pulled into all of these different places, and they're like, if he would just focus his attention and his energy on the task at hand, he might have more success. But I thought this match was probably, I don't know. I really liked Zach and Cobb from the day before, so it's a toss up. But I think that this kind of edges that just a little bit in terms of my favorite match on these two shows.
Yeah, I'm like 4.5 on this matchup here. I think I'm like more like 4.25 on Cobb and Saber. But I thought this match was just excellent. This was what Never is all about. I thought Gabe Kidd really stepped up here and proved that he can hang in this style of matchup, like you mentioned, do that house formula and go to the next level, get the crowd really invested. And the crowd was split. There was a lot of Shingo chants, but there was also a lot of Gabe Kidd chants, even though he's shooting the bird at the crowd and yelling and cursing at everybody and yelling at Despy and getting in everybody's face. Like the crowd loves that. They're getting behind him. He still is a dojo guy. I know he started in the LA dojo, but he spent a lot of time in the Noge dojo, and they watched him grow up. And I think the fans are invested in his journey, and they know that the true life story about his mental health issues. And so I think they were really rallying behind him here as well. And so, yeah, there was big 50-50 chance. And yeah, he looked really good here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with Gabe Kidd because he seems to be so divisive. There are those fans that really don't buy into him whatsoever. They're kind of upset by the gimmick, and and for me, I don't know. Like I've always been a character guy when it comes to the type of wrestling that I like. Growing up as a fan of 1980s like Jim Crockett, not that he would fit into that mold, but somebody that can talk and talk people into the arenas. And I've heard a lot of other podcasters recently say that he reminds them of like not necessarily like, obviously he's a British man, but like in terms of like just the attitude, reminds them of like early Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I could kind of see some of that DNA in there. And it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him, because he is re-signed with the company and everything like that. But he has been losing some of these bigger matches. And so you're kind of waiting for him to pull off one of the big victories. Maybe that's coming up at Resurgence. We'll see. But I was sort of kind of, like I mentioned earlier, I was sort of hoping like maybe he'd take the Never title and then turn around and win the Strong title. And then the discussion would start to be had like, do we need multiple open weight titles? What's the purpose of this?
Yeah, I was hoping he would have won here too. Yeah, go in and beat Eddie, and then who knows? That he could beat Uemura, and he'd be like, yeah, I'm the king of open weight. Like, we don't need all these other titles. Like, this is the real Triple Crown. The real open weight title or whatever. And I thought that could have been a cool direction for him, but also not the case here. But I do think he's probably going to get that strong open weight title, and yeah, hopefully there are more big wins for him to come, since he is. We know he's under contract, and I think he's a special talent, and I think that they should turn the heat up on him. Hopefully, he gets a good G1 block, and he can really stand out in that tournament as well. But yeah, I'm a fan of Gabe Kidd. I know some people think he's a try hard, and he's kind of this fake character, but I don't know, man. I think he's very believable to me. He cuts those promos, the way his aggression, his attitude. Like I believe he will mess you up.
Yeah, I believe me too. And in fact, the only thing that I feel like hurts a little bit the gimmick is the way that he talks so much smack and then doesn't come up on the winning side. More often than not, that's a little detrimental. But it is what it is. Like he's still developing in terms of the kayfabe. Uh, as far as like him being a tryhard, I one of the things that I appreciate about his character is the way he's able to kind of take real world occurrences, what's going on, what fans are talking about, and then interweave it into the kayfabe. And instead of it turning into like a worked shoot, it's turning into a shoot worked. and like he's taking real stuff and turning them into kayfabe. And
Yeah.
then you're like, and it's not quite like it's not Brian Pillman-esque. It's not like he's a, you're not wondering where the line is. You know that he is still, for lack of a better term, a character within the confines of New Japan's kayfabe. Like he's not crossing that line, but he's still talking about, what's going on with Mox. He's talking about what's going on with AEW. He's talking about Tanahashi. During the press conference, there was like a really uncomfortable moment with him and Sugabayashi, where I was like, bro, you can get fucking fired. Like,
Did you see the tweets of him and Obari?
yeah, I saw him and Obari. Obari was saying, like, I should have fired you. And I'm like, are they working or are they shooting? I don't know.
So yeah, a couple questions here. Discord Daddy MJ says, "It's a never title and what it represents, where the true heart and soul of NJPW resides."
It's interesting because there was a time where I would have said like the never title was just the third string, you know, um, kind of a belt that, for lack of a better term, didn't need to exist. It was just a taking up space, and it's gone through so many transitional phases and representations of what it means. And for these guys, yeah, I mean, the type of match they had and the promos that they were cutting in the lead up to it definitely seems to represent a certain aspect of, what we deem in modern times strong style.
Yeah, and I thought also that played into the story too. I wanted to mention, Gabe Kidd, he was doing moves of, some of the top never champions. He was doing some of Shibata's moves and the Rainmaker into the slap. He did Ishii's brain buster. So he was doing a lot of, the big, like, never champions moves on the Shingo, which I thought also kind of played into this whole story of wanting to prove that, never should be the true, IWGP and this kind of heart and soul behind the promotion. Next question here from Def Triangle 720 says, "Should Gabe challenge for the never title again at Dominion?"
I would be in favor of that. I feel like Shingo is a really great mountain for him to climb over, and prove himself. And, for a lot of people, they see Shingo as like this, this bar that needs to be cleared. And I feel like he could really make him. So possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that, have that big rematch and finally him get that big win. Especially 'cause it seems like, the War Dogs have a lot of momentum right now. They're already signed. They're all starting to win some championships. So giving him a big moment at Dominion would be cool.